In today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, I'm thrilled to sit down with Robbin Turner, the visionary founder of Violet Botanical Skincare, a brand that harmonizes African ancestral plant wisdom with modern skincare rituals. Robbin shares her personal journey from creating natural remedies for her family's eczema to building a skincare line that prioritizes transparency, ethical sourcing, and education. We'll dive into her exploration of herbalism, the challenges of scaling a business while staying true to her values, and the power of in-person events for networking and growth. Whether you're interested in skincare, entrepreneurship, or sustainability, you'll love this insightful conversation with Robbin Turner of Violet Botanical Skincare. Let's get this party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the show, Robbin. I am so excited to talk to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, we have such a history of when we first met, which we're going to get into all of that. But I just got reminded that you also graduated from Temple University, as did I. And I
Oh,
don't know if we ever talked about that because you and I have a history. So let me catch our listeners up. Robbin and I actually met back in, I believe it was 2017, when I had my office at a WeWork in Hollywood. And we have always had events there, various events. And Robbin was there one day as one of the sponsors, and she had this beautiful booth with her skincare products. And I remember seeing her and just being immediately attracted to her. First of all, your product booth and packaging was gorgeous. And me as a
thank
marketer,
you.
that just grabs me, right? But then we started talking, and I was like, oh my God, you're so amazing. This is really great. And we really got along. And then after that, I remember I even invited you to another event that I was actually chairing. So I know we did that one too. And then, life happens in the pandemic, and we kind of lost touch until a couple weekends ago. I walk into another event and I see this beautiful woman standing by the entrance, and I'm like, I know her. And I see your name tag, and then I saw Violet Botanical Skincare, and I'm like, oh my God, it's that Violet. So here we are again now in 2024.
I know. I know. I know. It's like we blinked. We went from 2017 to 2024. It happened so quickly. But I know when I was at WeWork, I remember meeting you there, and you're also just so energetic and bubbly and open and friendly.
Well, you are very sweet. So, yes, we've had a long history. And I was really excited when I saw you at the recent event because I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I'm so glad that she's still doing Violet Botanical Skincare because I remember how much I loved it. And, in the world of small business and entrepreneurs, sometimes things work out and then sometimes they don't. And I was really happy. Wow, 7 years later, Robbin still has her business growing and thriving, and she's doing amazing. So I immediately was like, please, please, please come on my podcast because I want to I want to share all of your words of wisdom and your experience with all the people that are out there listening and are, maybe starting their own entrepreneurial journey. So with that said, I'm a very generous interviewer, so I did provide you with a long list of questions of where we would start. But really, as I started to just do more research on you, I realized how personal this was to you because this was really inspired by your family's needs, especially dealing with things like eczema. And I saw on your YouTube channel specifically, you very much talked about dealing with dry, itchy skin. So, how has your personal connection shaped your approach to skincare?
Well, when I was growing up, I didn't know what it was. I went to a dermatologist, and they said, "Oh, you just have sensitive skin. You have sensitive skin." And it just seemed everything itched me. And It's annoying. I mean, everything from like certain fabrics, pantyhose, right? Pantyhose would just itch me. And, people would look at me like I was like, okay, something's wrong with you. Like everything can't possibly itch you. So then as I became an adult, actually, first, my son and husband actually were diagnosed with eczema before me. And so I wanted to help them because I knew how it was having this, air quotes, itchy skin or sensitive skin growing up. So I know how annoying that is. And so I wanted to help them because I understood. And so and when I started reading about the steroid creams and all that, and I was like, no. And I remember my grandmother, those ancestors, they carry those traditions from wherever they come. We wherever they come from, the South or whatever country you've come from, you carry these old traditions with you. And so, and then when I was diagnosed, first I was misdiagnosed with eczema, which is common for African American and just Black and brown skin. We're often misdiagnosed. So it was misdiagnosed first, but then it got worse. And so then when the doctor was like, okay, I'm sending you to the dermatologist. And then that's when I was diagnosed with eczema. And then that's when it all started to click. And I'm like, you know what? Back then, and when I started doing more and more research, I was thinking, you know what? Back then, it wasn't sensitive skin. I had eczema, but no one ever diagnosed it. No one ever said that. It was just like, oh, you just have sensitive skin. Well, only just use sensitive skin products or whatever, which still didn't work. And so, and I just wanted to, and especially being a new mom, when something happens to your child or your children, you always blame yourself. It's always like, what did I do wrong? I did something wrong. Oh my goodness, I'm going to scar this child for life. What did I do? And I remember my grandmother, she was famous for her, we used to call them old wives remedies, but they were just actually traditions, African traditions that were actually just passed down the generation. And the thing about it is that a lot of it is passed down through story or through word of mouth, right? So I didn't have anything to go back to look at a book, or my grandmother's no longer with us. So, and I called my aunt, who's actually only 2 years older than me, and I was like, "Do you remember what she used to use?" I mean, sometimes. Stephanie, this stuff didn't taste good. It didn't smell good, but by golly, it worked. It worked. And that's when I just immersed myself into herbalism, African herbalism and the botanicals. And that's how I started, because I was like, and then when I went to the pharmacist, because when I was diagnosed, I was left with a prescription of steroid cream, which is, it has historically been the go-to for eczema is steroid creams. And then when you do your pharmacist consult, when he's like, oh, let me tell you how to use this. And when he told me, well, how this works is it stops the growth of your skin. I'm like, what? It stops the growth of your skin. And he's like, oh yes. And then you might get topical steroid withdrawal. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, your skin goes through like this addiction withdrawal syndrome, and using steroid creams for a prolonged period, then you get this, it's an irritation. It's a really nasty skin reaction. And so I was like, oh, no, thank you. And I nicely slid it back across the counter. And I was like, okay, I need to find a better way, because that's just not the route I want for my family. Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. And first of all, just going back to what you said, being a woman of color, it's like just traditionally you're misdiagnosed with skin conditions because the research in the study was never done on darker skin. It was always just lighter skin. So people
Exactly.
didn't know. And I hear that more and more where, now we're like having conversations like, no, the skin, reacts different, and situations that might have been easier to see just because it was a lighter skin get misdiagnosed than on a darker skin. And it's like, oh, that's just what that was. Like you said, it was just eczema, but they were just like, oh, it's just itchy skin. But what you said about steroids is so interesting to me, because steroids is one of those things where people think it's a cure and it's not. It's a masking solution. all it does
Exactly.
is mask whatever is going on, but it never treats the actual problem. And, I had a very funny conversation with my mom one day about Tylenol. She's big on Tylenol for
Oh,
everything.
wow.
And I go, Mom, do you understand that Tylenol doesn't cure you? It simply masks your symptoms for whatever your body is telling you that's wrong. And she honestly was like, no, no, it's like taking medicine, like you would to cure you. I'm like, no, it doesn't cure you. It literally helps you ignore what the real problem was. It might,
Exactly.
bring the inflammation down a little, but there's a reason why your body gets inflamed, right? So, with that said, when I hear about people like you that are like, no, there's actual ways that we can heal the skin and make it better and stronger. And I know you really dive deep into your YouTube channel on this. I've been watching all of your videos. And I just love it because I like to hear that we're able to cure skin problems rather than simply mask them. So, something you didn't know about me, surprisingly, because I feel like I've told you everything already. I actually came down with adult acne when I first moved to LA. So, yeah, so when I was in high school, I had, the usual amount of blemishes and all, and then I moved to Los Angeles and I had full blown cystic acne and it was horrific, horrific. So, do you know what they gave me? What they told me to do? You know what's coming. It's our old friend Accutane. Slap some Accutane in that girl. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, sign this disclaimer because if you get pregnant, your children are going to come out with really horrible, horrible, what do you call it, genetic defects. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh, and then you have to sign a disclaimer that you'll stay on birth control because they're just like, we do not want you to get pregnant. Okay, I have a problem with this. Why are you giving me a drug that is so potent and toxic like that, that it could like actually harm an unborn child? And I was like, whoa. So, and the other, advice they gave me in situations or whatever, this was back in the 90s. I did what I could. I did take the Accutane. It did go away. But then the more I heard about Accutane and researched it, I was like, I don't want to ever recommend that to anyone, right? I
Yes.
mean, it was pretty toxic. So, stuff like that, skin conditions, like you were saying, you look at them and when you realize what it is, you're like, I'm not putting that on my child, let alone myself.
Exactly, exactly. And and it's the thing, and it's more of, relieving. I know you said like cure. Unfortunately, there isn't a cure yet for, eczema or anything like that. But it's like, but just something that is less damaging, to just kind of relieve it. And some people, it's almost like cycles, or as I like to say now, I'm kind of in remission of my of my eczema. I haven't, knock on hardwood, I have not had a flare up, but I I think it's a matter of listening to our body. And like you said, you looked at like, what are these disclaimers I need to sign? And it's going to do what? Like it's going to affect future generations. What? What kind of a medicine is this? And so it is, and I think we really need to listen to our bodies, and a lot of people don't like to do that. It's like we're used to going to the doctor or going to the drugstore and, well, let me get Tylenol or let me get something, that prescribed that will mask it. Like you said, it puts a Band-Aid on it. But we really need to get to what the root of the problem is. And I realized for me, mine was stress. And I got adult eczema. I guess I was diagnosed as an adult, and but I realized it was during a stressful time. We were moving, and moving is stressful. That's anybody who's moved, the stress of moving, and it was just really stressful. And it's just I know, like, when I'm stressed and I'm starting to feel a little itchy, I say to myself, wait, calm down, breathe, calm down, relax. We don't want to flare up. You don't. And I think for me, that has also helped manage it. And then also I did some dietary changes too, because there are some dietary triggers for eczema. So, but I think it is, we really have to stop and listen to our body. And it's so funny that you said, when you moved to LA, you got the acne. Since I've moved to LA, and I've been here now for 21 years, and since I've moved to LA, I've never had allergies. I have eye allergies now. Like my eyes just itch and itch. And it's like really weird. And a friend of ours who's from Chicago, he also said the same thing. I've never had allergies. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, all of a sudden I developed allergies. It's the air. I mean, we don't consider, we think about what we eat, what we might put on our skin, but we never think about the environmental impact that and the air quality, especially here in Los Angeles, how that really impacts us, especially children. It's like cases of like asthma and stuff like that are higher here in Los Angeles because of, for children, they're at a greater risk.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's so funny, we almost don't want to believe that it's something so simple as like taking a breath, relieving the stress that can really help you in so many ways. But you took it an even step further because you started to do a lot of research into African herbalism, aromatherapy, and some modern herbalism. So tell me, like, what was kind of one of the most, sorry, tell me what was one of the most surprising discoveries that you've realized in your studies?
When I was because I took advantage of when we were on lockdown for COVID, and that's when I did my whole herbalism certification and coursework. And I realized when I said to you earlier, all these things my grandmother would make that we didn't know I was like, oh my goodness, Eureka. This is what it is. And I was like, oh, she was making a tincture, she was making a decoction or a poultice. And so that to me was like, oh my goodness, like it wasn't old wives stuff. She really knew what she was doing. She really knew what she was doing. But it's like I said, because this stuff is just passed down through story or just, mothers pass it down to their daughters and that way. But yeah, so that was what I found was number one was surprising, and number two, you always hear in science and scientific environments like, oh, longitudinal studies, like we've done this study for 20 years, or we followed these people for 20 years, and the ingredients that I use, like the shea butters and the different oils, they go all the way back to like ancient Egyptian times. Like these things are like have been found in tombs, like Cleopatra tombs, and these, so they have been around. Now talk about a longitudinal study. We're not talking 20 years, we're talking centuries, that they've been around. And where do we hear like, oh, stop using shea butter. Shea butter is bad for you. You don't hear that, but we hear the other stuff. Oh, stop using tricyclosan or those other chemicals that they have. Stop using these things. That's been in our, in our toothpastes and our hand sanitizers. So that was real. I was like, wow, they've been using this stuff way back since ancient Egyptian times, and they're still using it. So people in rural places in Southern Africa is where I mainly source my ingredients. They're still using these ingredients, and the majority of the world actually still use indigenous medicines and healers. It's only here, like in the West, it's like we get a paper cut and we want to run to the doctor's office. But a lot of the world still use plant healing and indigenous healers.
Yeah, I've said it many times before on this podcast that we've almost over convenienced ourselves into like permanent states of disease. Like
Yes.
we don't even know how things work. People don't know where their food comes from. They don't know what's in their medicine. It just, goes on and on. So, let's talk a little bit about your entrepreneur journey then. So you decided, you had this or you didn't decide, you realized you had this skin condition, you wanted to find better solutions. Tell me what it was like for you then to decide, starting your business. How did you do that? And then where did you first start going to find the ingredients that you would need to make your products? Because your products are made in small batches still, correct?
Yes,
Yeah. So
yes,
tell
they
me
are.
about from the beginning how you started out. How did you start figuring out the pieces of from I have this idea to, now I have a product.
Right. Well, I started with, okay, I want to use something natural. And I know people out there will say, oh, well, natural doesn't mean safe. Right, because poison ivy is natural, but it's not safe. People use that, they use that excuse all the time. Yes, I understand that. But I wanted to use something because what are we? We are like plants, right? We're organisms like plants. So I thought, let me find something plant-based. So then I knew about the shea butter, and so I started researching. But then, and then my husband put this challenge to me. He said, okay, shea butter comes from Africa. And he said, well, look at the African women, like the older African women. They still have beautiful skin. Find out what they use. I'm like, oh, you're right. That's a good idea. And so that's when I just started researching, just a cursory like Google search, like African ingredients, African oils, and things started to pop up. And then I got a hold of this website that it's African Herbalism. They have all, well, not all, but they have, the African ingredients and the plant ingredients. And I was like, oh, wow. And I started going through it. It's almost like an encyclopedia. And I started going through that. And I'm like, okay, oh, this ingredient sounds good. And I'm thinking, eczema is itchy, it's inflammation, it's redness, right? And it's dry. It can ooze, but as mine has before, but it can also kind of be dry, dry and crusty. So I thought, okay, so these are the things that I want to relieve. What ingredients are good to relieve that? So then when I started researching, okay, this ingredient, so I started listing ingredients. Okay, now what can I access? What can I get? And so then I was like, oh, okay, I can get this ingredient, I can get this one. And so then that's when I actually found a supplier in Botswana, and they have a place in Botswana and they have a place here in the US. And so I called the US one and I vetted them, and the lady probably we are friends to this day. Like I call her up and so and I called them and I asked her about a million questions, and she was so patient and she answered them, and it was the same information that I found in doing my research. So I'm like, oh, okay, so these people, they're legit. They're saying the same thing that I've been reading in my research. And that's when I start, okay, well, let me get small size, let me get a sample. So I formulated actually my first body butter in my kitchen at home using just my mixer that I used to mix cakes with. So, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. So, and then I bought a little more. And so then we started using it on the dry skin. And then I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. And then we started using it on our whole body. And so after that, one time I went to the doctor for my physical. So I've been going to this doctor since I've been in Los Angeles. And she had my folder in her arm. This is, before everything transitioned over to computers. She had my folder in her arms, and it was a thick folder because, like I said, I've been going to her since I've been here. And before she even touched me, you're sitting there in that little gown, feeling all uncomfortable. She looks at me and she says, "What have you been doing to your skin?" So, of course, first I went negative Nelly. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dying. I'm doing something wrong. I just went totally negative. And so she says, your skin looks so great. Oh my gosh, I have so many patients who have dry skin and they only like bathe or shower like once a month because their skin is so dry. Oh my gosh, you got to tell me what you're doing with your skin. So then I told her, and she was like, you need to start selling that. She's like, oh my gosh, do you have any brochures? You can put them here in my office. And I was like, oh, wow, that's okay. All right. So this is really good. And that's what gave me the confidence and the confirmation of, okay, all right, there are other people out there. She says she sees a lot of patients who have really dry skin. I'm like, all right, maybe I should start making these and helping other people out. And that's how I got started.
Wow, what a fantastic endorsement. I mean, it works on you so much so that other people notice, including a doctor, and says, you should sell this, like other people could use it. And I can attest to anyone who is listening or even watching the video version of this. Robin has the most gorgeous skin. It
Oh,
is
thank you.
just absolutely glows in person. It really does. And you can tell, you're definitely using the right products on it. And if you ever had eczema on your face, I could not tell.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
in fact, next time we meet in person, maybe you can give me a few pointers on, something to do with my skin. That would be great. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's really interesting what you say then about like your first thought when she asked you what are you using is that you immediately thought you were doing something wrong. Because I think again, we've now been trained so much as a society to almost not believe in ourselves, to only
Mhm.
believe in what we consider standard medical practices, that when it's our own body telling us something, we're like, oh, well, we must be wrong or we must be doing something wrong. And again, I think it comes down to the fact that we don't really know where things come from anymore. We don't know how things are made. We don't know where our food comes from. We don't know where our trash goes. That's the other thing. We don't know where our trash goes. And we'll get into sustainability in a second. But I was really excited when I read that, you were really interested in sourcing these materials in a way that you're like made sense for you and your mission. And with that said, I was also excited when I read to find out that your products are totally vegan and cruelty free, because that is something that is a big part of my life and something that I definitely want to help other people to realize is important when they're looking at their skincare. Because one of the things I say about the whole cruelty free label now, which seems to get on more and more products, which I love, is the fact of this. Think back to a time before we had such a spotlight on, what it meant to be cruelty free. And for people who are out there listening and may not know, cruelty free means that the product has not been tested on animals.
Mhm.
Okay. So think about anything caustic in your life that you've ever used, whether it's a product or a cleaning solution. Up until a couple of years ago, all of those products were tested on animals. And the way they did that was on an animal's skin or in their eyes or injecting it into their body. And by the way, none of this is consensual. The animals are not saying volunteering for this. And that was honestly something that really got me so involved in the vegan movement, was knowing that this stuff was done to animals and people didn't know about it. That, in laboratories, what they actually do when they're testing, makeup that would be put on people, they would actually cut the eyelids off rabbits and animals like that and insert these caustic, products into their eyes just to see the level of irritation. And when I first heard that story as a teenager, I was so horrified. And as I tell people that story now, they don't believe me. I'm like, no, no, that's what it means. So I'm like, please, at least if you don't live a vegan lifestyle, look for products that are cruelty free and
Mhm.
educating them. So I was so happy. And I really wanted to just highlight that you took it to that step too, and making sure your products are ethically, humanely, and cruelty free, created.
Yes, and also and when you mention cruelty free and you see all the labels, there are different standards of cruelty free. Now, I'm Leaping Bunny certified cruelty free. Leaping Bunny, first of all, I have to recertify every year. Some other organizations, it's one and done. You get that cruelty free once, you do it once, and then that's it. Every year, I have to recertify with Leaping Bunny. And also with Leaping Bunny, my whole supply chain has to be cruelty free. So I have to send a form. I have to send an electronic form to all of my suppliers, and they have to fill that out saying that they're cruelty free. So this is why, like there's different, like that's what I'm just saying, there's different levels of, and that's why I chose Leaping Bunny. People might say, oh, you got to do it every year. Or I just rather do this one over here where you just do it one and done, and that's it. But your suppliers change. Like even now, my suppliers change. Sometimes this supplier can't get something or their prices might go up. So I have to find another supplier. And some of the certifying organizations don't take that into consideration. And they trust the organization or the people or the brand that, okay, I'm going to trust that you're going to continue to be cruelty free. But Leaping Bunny is like, oh, no, no, no. every year. We want you to recertify, and you need, and if you add a new supplier, as a matter of fact, now, even before I even order, because I do have some new suppliers. And even before I order from them, I send them the form first. I call them and say, "Hey, look, I'm looking to order from you. I am Leaping Bunny certified cruelty free. I need you to fill this out first before I place my order." And they will, and it's an electronic form. They get it. I email it to them. They fill it out. I check my Leaping Bunny file, my account, and say, okay, form was received, and then I place my order.
That's
And
amazing.
so,
Thank you for sharing that. I wasn't even
mhm,
aware of all of the steps that needed to be taken for that, for the Leapy Bunny certification. And that's
yes.
great to hear because you're right, suppliers change. And then, you want to make sure you still have the same messaging that you had intended from the beginning. And I do understand that, people are now becoming aware of it and really searching that out with products. I do look for that on all of my products now.
Right, right. Because sometimes, there's a brand can be cruelty free, but some of the ingredient, and that's what they were finding, is that their ingredients, when they went back to the supply chain, oh, but this XYZ ingredient that you got from ABC supplier, they're not cruelty free. Or they found that sometimes the subsidiary might be cruelty free, but the parent company, because a lot of these large multinational corporations own smaller, distributors, supply chains. So sometimes they were not cruelty free. So that's why I'm saying with Leaping Bunny, everybody through that whole supply chain line has to be cruelty free.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And speaking of ingredients that people don't really have an idea about, lanolin, which is in a lot of stuff, people don't know how that's sourced. And I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but anyone who's listening to this, please go do a Google search of where lanolin comes from, and then let me know if you're okay with that, because that was another big shocker for me. So let's take a step back real quick, because you said you started creating this product in your kitchen. How did you make the leap then to actually creating it in a way that you could then market it and sell it, in larger scale? What did that look like to you? And did you bootstrap it all yourself, or did you look for funding?
Well, I am still bootstrapping. When I look for funding, I look for non-dilutive funding, meaning grants. So, but I'm still bootstrapping. And so once I started, from my kitchen and doing it there, and then I took a course actually in good manufacturing practices. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to start selling this, I don't want anyone to sue me. So I took that course. I got my liability insurance because I had to protect myself. And then I have to buy separate equipment. Now, there's still home-based businesses, and I'm actually still home-based, but we've moved to a larger place, a larger home, and I actually carved out a space that I have as my manufacturing space here in my home, and I have all separate equipment. Like when I was making it for my family and testing everything out, like I said, I used my mixer that I use to make cakes and pies and all that other stuff. I use that. But then now I had to get commercial type of equipment, and I have to get all separate equipment. You keep that stuff separate. You have to sanitize everything. I have just all of my stuff never comes in contact with, the stuff that I use for my household. I don't even, manufacture it in the same area. So everything has to be highly sanitized, um, rubber gloves, all the protective gear, the PPE gear. That it was so funny when things started opening up again, after we were shut down from COVID. I'm like, oh yeah, I have all that stuff. I have masks, I have rubber gloves, I have all that stuff, because that's what I need for when I'm manufacturing my things. Yeah, so that's how and then really just following the good manufacturing practices to make sure you're not cross-contaminating things, and making sure that I have enough, I use silicone spatulas, things that are not going to, hold on to bacteria, hold on to odor and stuff like that. So it is cleaning that stuff is just that's just a whole nother
Yeah.
that's just a whole nother thing, just making sure you're sanitizing it properly. And every time I use something, every time I set up, even when I'm done, I sanitize my area when I'm clean. Even though I know I've sanitized it the last time I used it, when I go back, I sanitize it again. So it just really, I am really a stickler about that. And that's just, I'm Virgo also, so that's part that's part of my type A personality anyway. So my
Yeah,
son,
that's it's great to hear that something like that to let people that are listening out there know that you can start a home-based business and have it be successful and really move it forward without having to really invest in a lot of overhead. And I know for a lot of times when we hear things like a skincare line, automatically we think big research laboratories and warehouses and all of this stuff that sounds very daunting, and it can make it so somebody's like, well, I don't have the means to do that, so they never start. And being in LA as we are, we have a lot of opportunities here. In fact, you may have just heard that LA now is going to have a certification process so people can have home-based food businesses, whereas before everything had to be done in an industrial kitchen. And now they're going to do the licensing and in the inspection so you can have, again, like you, a designated part of your home with specific, machinery that you use or whatever, utensils you use that you can also then sell that to the public, which is great because then now that allows more mom and pop food-based businesses to be able, okay, I can do this without having to go and find an industrial kitchen, which is, another process, another kind of expense. And that's great because, obviously in beauty, we've already done that. So, I'm so excited to hear that you figured that out early on because, again, we want to make sure that our small business owners are supported and really feeling like they can also do that. So you mentioned something about being very strict, and I do read in one of your interviews about you were a strict rule follower, which is something you had to unlearn. So can you expand on how on that and how this change impacted your business?
well, yes, like I said, I'm Virgo, I'm type A personality. It's funny because my husband, that show that used to come on TV, Monk, with Adrian Shalhoub. My husband and my son, they call me Monk. They say I'm Monk. And it's fun when I used to take our son to the pediatrician, she would say to me, you don't have to use so many wipes and stuff on him. He does need to get some germs so he can build his immune system. So I've always, my mom even says, even as a kid, I was always like that, just very particular. I just don't touch anything. And so yes, in that respect, as far as the products, I'm still very strict like that. I'm still a stickler like that. But as far as breaking the rules, some is more of, social media. I grew up in a generation where, you just keep your private to yourself. You just keep private things about yourself to yourself, or it's in your home or your family. But as far as with the social media, people want to know the faces behind the brands. They want to know a little bit about that person. Like they feel like I know Robin, I know Stephanie, they want to know that. So I'm loosening up a little more about just telling a little more about my story and just kind of my background. So I'm loosening it up a bit about that. And then also just some of the regulations, and they're not strictly monitored. I don't make medical claims because cosmetics are an over-the-counter drug. So I don't make any medical claims, but I used to be a stickler about, like, people will say to me, well, put up before and after photos, because I'll have customers who will send me before and after photos. I'm like, no, I can't do that. That's making a medical claim. And they're like, but people want to see. And so now I think, you know what? like you said about we don't know where our food's coming from, what's in our food. I call it Frankenfood now because we just we just don't know. And I think to myself, I said, wait a minute, they're frankenfooding our, food system, but yet I can't put up a picture of someone who has, you know what? Wow, my skin was really dry. Look at it before. Now look at it after. But you will come down on me about that. But yet all the stuff that's going on in our food and as chemicals, as the number of synthetic and man-made chemicals increase, same is with illness. They're rising together. So I thought, well, you know what? I said, I'm going to start putting up my before and after photos. And when people send me that, and I said, and you know what? If the FDA reach out to me and send me a cease and desist letter, that means I've made it big.
Exactly.
So I'm
Exactly.
like,
If
that's a
people
good
start
thing.
coming after you, it means you're making enough noise that you're getting the attention you need, which is great. So, okay, so we're glad that you're using social media. Again, like I'd mentioned before, I am watching your YouTube videos, which I fully advise, I fully endorse to people who are listening to this to go and actually check them out because you do address, again, a lot of the common skin problems, the itchy skin, the eczema, and really talking about it. And I know education is really important to you in those regards. So, tell me a little bit like how do you incorporate that education into your marketing efforts specifically, like both online and in-person events? Because I know you're the queen of the events because we've already talked about all the ones you've been to, but tell me about a little bit like what you're trying to achieve with that education.
Right. So what I try to do is I try to make it fun. So it's I'm a research nerd. I am a self-professed research nerd. I can sit, as a matter of fact, I have a research article right here on my, I can read research all day, but I have to make it fun, right? So what I do and what I've started to do is poke fun, light fun at having dry skin. And so I'm like, okay, how can I say to people or, like make it interesting? So now when people ask me like, oh, what do you do? I said, oh, I help people kick ass. And I get, that's the reaction I get.
I love it.
People, and they're like, so then, and then it gets them then interested. Like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I help people with dry skin. They're like, oh, and even with and lately I've been using like memes on my social media and just trying to poke fun at it, but not hurtful fun, because but just kind of poking fun at, oh, this dry skin, or oh, someone who's recommended Vaseline to me, which is, a byproduct of crude oil, as opposed to say body butter. So I kind of poke light fun about that and do stuff like that. And so just really try to make it approachable to people. And believe it or not, a lot of women, a lot of American women do not know how to take care of their skin. And I get that question with my body wash. Well, how do I use that? And I think it's a body wash. Do I use it like on the dry spots? Do I use it every day? And I'm like, it's a body wash. You use it like you would use any commercial, body wash. And so I get those questions. And so I thought, okay, well, let me try to address those questions, but just have a little fun with it. Let's make it conversational, like I'm talking to a friend, like I'm talking, so that I'm not pointing the finger at them saying, well, you don't know how to do this, or you should know how to do this. I'm big on not shoulding on people. And I remember when I was doing my master's and I had to take a public health course. And that was the instructor. She was saying that is the number one problem with people adhering to something that, like when there's an epidemic, adhering to whether they need to take their medicines, is when we should on people. You should do this and you should do that. So I always try to remember, don't should on people, make it, like I said, poke fun at it, but we can fix this. That's all right. I got you. We can fix this. So that's
Yeah.
how I try to infuse it in my marketing.
I was going to say you hit on some magic marketing moments right there. A good tagline is always a winner. So I love that the Ash one. Anything clever and funny makes people remember it. So yeah, I think you're definitely on the right track for all of that. Real quickly, as we're kind of winding down here, let's talk just a little bit about those in-person events and how important they are for your business. Because like I said, I met you at an in-person event. I brought you to another one. I reconnected with you at an in-person event. For as business person to business person, give us a little bit of wisdom on why you attend these events, the importance of them for your business, and maybe a little bit of what's moving forward for you.
Right. So, as having a skincare brand and I'm online, I'm in a retail store, but if you're not near that store, you want to touch it, you want to smell it, you want to see it. So that's important for me as far as with my products, doing the in-person event. As far as networking, it's important to do the in-person events because, like that saying, it's like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's so funny because I've gotten connections through knowing people. Like I got the organization when I met someone and they invited me to the WeWork. And then that's when I met you. And then you invited me to the other event that you were chairing. And then from then when people meet you, they're like, oh, I have this event. So it's really about networking. And I've gotten so many of my opportunities by networking. And a lot of people and a lot of businesses and small businesses, oh, I don't have time to network. And I completely understand when you're wearing all the C-suite hats, CEO, CFO, COO, CTO, when you're wearing all the C-suite hats and all, you think, well, I don't have time to do this. But yes, you have to do that. You have to show up. People need to see your face. I was just at an event Thursday down at the convention center. And then when I see people I know, I go up to them even just to say hi, to say, I went up to this guy and I was like, oh, hey, John, I told you I was going to be at this event. I can't wait to hear you on your panel. And he goes, oh, right, I remember you. You said you were coming to this panel. And people start to remember you. People start to remember you and then they recommend you. That happened to me recently with an event where I spoke at the LA Chamber about small businesses using AI. Well, that came through somebody at Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator at Lacey recommending. So the LA Chamber called Lacey, and I had spoken at Lacey, and I'm all involved with Lacey and on one of their committees. And then they recommended me for that. And now through that, now the LA Chamber has recommended me for stuff. So it's like you have to show up. People need to see your face. People want to see who you are. They want to get to know you. They want to get a feel for you so that if something comes up, they will recommend you. And not only is that good for you, but it's good for the person. It's like, say, if you recommended me and I did a good job, not only are they going to be happy with me, but they're going to be happy with you because they're like, oh, wow, Stephanie recommended this really. Wow, Stephanie is the bomb. Wow, she really recommended this really good person to me. So that's why you need to show up. And that's part of being a CEO. It's that you have to show up and you have to show your face.
That's absolutely true. And, as a person who does design websites for businesses, I'm still constantly amazed that people think, oh, I'll just put up a website and people just find it. And that is not the way it works.
Mm-mm.
It's like, yes, you could do online advertising, but why would they click on you? And definitely when you're starting a smaller business as an entrepreneur, like people have to invest personally and emotionally to you. Like for me, because we've had so many great experiences together, you can be sure whenever an opportunity comes to me that I'm like, you know what? Robbin would be perfect for this. Like, I want to keep raising you up. I invited you to my podcast immediately. I'm like, this would be great. I want to get her out in front of more people. And, business owners out there, these are the building steps to your business is getting other people to emotionally and not only just financially, but emotionally be invested in your business and want to keep raising you up. So, whatever I have going on, I'm always going to think I should bring Robbin to this. She would be great. In fact, talking about AI after this, I do have an event to invite you to, which I'll say offline because by the time this is published, it'll be past anyway. But so yeah, okay. With that said, we do have to tie this up. I am so glad that we reconnected. I definitely want to get together and have coffee with you and just talk about more things and maybe even talk about our days at Temple because we obviously have
Exactly.
so much in common.
Exactly.
And maybe get some like skincare tips. Like I said, I still have quite a few acne scars. Thank God for good lighting. But with that
Oh,
said, Robbin, thank you. It's been a pleasure, as always, to speak with you. And I can't wait to see where Violet Botanical Skincare goes.
oh, you're welcome. And thank you so much for inviting me. This was fun. I just love your energy, Stephanie. So it's like you call me up or you'll ask me to do something. Yes, yes, if I'm available, you know what the answer is going to be.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
In three, two, one. Well, that was awesome.
I know
Oh my
that
God,
was
I
fun.
want to talk to you forever. I seriously want to have coffee with you because I know we could talk about so much more.
Yes. Yeah, this was fun. I mean, you have great energy. You always had great energy, you know?
So do
So,
you. So do you. Like I
so
said, I was really excited when I realized who you were because I was like, oh my God. I was just so happy that you were still moving forward with your business, because I
yeah,
know it gets discouraging for people and sometimes they kind of fall off. I'm like, no, she's still doing it. That's awesome. So I
yeah.
wanted to I wanted to really impart that message, to my audience that, you can be in this for the long run. Not everything has to be such a flash in the pan. Because on
Yeah,
the internet, everybody's an overnight sensation.
exactly. And and it just takes time
It
to
does.
build, and I think sometimes when you mentioned about the funding, and, people don't realize, they go after that funding, but that VC wants his or her money or that equity fund, they want their money back in 5 years
Yeah.
with like a 500%,
Yeah,
So it's
nobody reads the fine print of Shark Tank. Everybody wants to be on
exactly.
Shark Tank, and they do not realize how much of their business and their proprietary information they are selling.
Exactly, exactly. And to me, it's like you started your business because clearly you had this idea, you didn't want to work for someone else or whatever. But then when you take this VC money, now you're working for someone, you're working for your investors.
Yes, you
And
are.
so, and I can pick and choose what I want to do.
Yeah.
There's brands that started when I did and they have investment money and I see their billboards up and they're horrible. I'm like, what is this promoting? And they have them like promoting everything. It's like they came out with t-shirts. It's like a sunscreen brand. They come out with t-shirts. They partner with Barbie and it's like, but this isn't like I've met you. This isn't what from what I met when I met you before you had all this wasn't your vision and what you're about. And so, and I know sometimes you need to pivot. I had to pivot because of COVID and this, recession, non-recession that they they don't want to talk about. But yeah, and it's like, no, that's not what you were talking about when I met you and when we were talking. It's almost like you just become like just a little cog in the corporate machine.
That's exactly right. It's a good we trade our freedom for the $1 million. Everybody's chasing $1 million when in reality you can earn a lot less and have a way happier life.
Yeah,
So
there's a guy, Chris Gillibrand, Chris Gillibrand, and he has this book called $100 Startup. And what he does is he interviews micro businesses. That's what he calls them, micro businesses, and that is where you have like five or less employees. And some of these businesses, it might be one or two. And some of these businesses are making millions of dollars, and it's like, and they don't have all of that. And some of them are still home businesses.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
It's
it's
true.
like, and it's just about who it's like, who do you want to be? Who are you? Are you going to stay true to yourself or are you going to, go with the corporate machine and lose what you envisioned.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
All right. I do have to run. I have another podcast starting in 5 minutes that I have to get on the
Okay.
next interview and switch my
Okay.
brain real quickly.
Okay.
But thank you so much. And let's definitely like plan a coffee or something. I'd love to chat with you more.
Sounds good, Stephanie. Thanks so much. You have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you too. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or a professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.